Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Unexpected Goals. This is your Champions League final preview. Luis Enrique's PSG versus Simone Inzaghi's Inter Milan. And there's something that's kind of really poetic about this final. You have PSG, who has been, quite frankly, cursed in this competition for a long time, from the heartbreak of hitting the post last year 6 times in the semifinals against Dortmund to losing the 2020 final against Bayern, from the 6-1 collapse in the second leg against Barcelona in 2017. PSG has really been through it all in this competition, but it really looks now that they finally have their best opportunity to get the trophy they've wanted so badly since Qatar took over the club in 2011. And how poetic would it be is if after potentially maybe the best French football player of all time, Kylian Mbappe, leaves the club in the summer, they get better and they're on the doorstep and they can win it without him. How poetic would that be? And then you have Simone Inzaghi's Inter, who were in this exact situation 2 years ago against Manchester City, and they were really unlucky to lose that match. They outshot City. They created more expected goals. They had four big scoring chances, but they missed all of them, and they ended up losing 1-0. There's a little bit of distraction going on off the field. Saudi club Al Hilal is potentially going to make Inzaghi the highest paid coach in the world. He wants some assurances from Inter. It sounds like they've put everything to the side before this Champions League final, but there is definitely that type of distraction that's overhanging this final for Inter. Will that come out on the field? Who knows? But the last time Inter or even an Italian club won the Champions League was in 2010. So it's been almost 15 years for Inter. It's been almost 15 years for Italy. So we have France versus Italy. We've had so many finals outside of Bayern winning in 2020. It's basically just been Spanish or English teams winning the Champions League. So we finally have neither of those in the final. So it should be an incredible final. Let's dive right into it. First off, PSG in possession versus Inter out of possession. In a lot of ways, this match and this final is really similar to Inter's semi-final two legs against Barcelona. Now, PSG is a little bit of a different team in a lot of aspects, but it's going to be Inter sitting in a 5-3-2 low block. They're going to compact the middle, and they're basically going to dare PSG to break them down. And, you know, PSG has these amazing position rotations, amazing fluidity. That you one time you'll see Kvaratskhelia start on the left, then he'll end up as a striker, then he'll end up as a right winger. You'll see João Neves playing as a false nine sometimes. You'll see Dembele drop. It's beautiful to watch. And it is difficult to defend if you're doing a man marking system, but Inter is not going to do that. They are going to sit in a 5-3-2, as you can see from this image here, and they are going to dare PSG to break them down. Now, how does PSG actually do that? Because Barcelona is the most extreme central overload team in the entire world. And basically what they did is they said, all right, you have one of two options. You can either deny us through the middle, or you can just leave you all out here 1v1, as you can see. And the decision that Inter made, especially in that first leg and more or less also in the second leg, was, all right, we'll deny you playing through the middle, and we'll just live with whatever happens with Yamal on the wing. Now, Yamal destroyed them, absolutely destroyed them. He was incredible. First leg against them, he had 14 successful dribbles, which is the record for a match is 17. Like, just incredible. Um, for PSG, it's going to have to come down to Kvaratskhelia, Barcola, Doué, and Dembele. Whatever combination they have out wide, they have to be able to win and beat Inter's fullbacks off the dribble, because there is no way that they are going to consistently play through the middle of this defensive block. Now, Barcelona, for the first leg, they were just kind of like, we're just hammering you all, hammering the right side of the pitch, hammering it, hammering, hammering it. And for PSG, they can do a couple different things, right? Like they can provide a little bit more width with two wingers, because Barcelona was inverting Rafinha, so it was uh, blanking on the left back's name from Barcelona right now. But anyway, in any case, Gerard Martin, sorry. But in any case, they can have two wingers, and those wingers typically will hug the touch lines, and they will try to provide that width, and they will try to allow PSG to have 4 or 5 man overloads through the middle. But again, Inter is never going to let that happen. They're never going to let PSG have a numerical advantage to the middle. So what it really comes down to for PSG is how effective are your wingers at beating Dumfries and DeMarco in 1v1s, and how effective are you actually creating chances off that? Because it's one thing to beat somebody off the dribble, but it's another thing to actually successfully get a cross in against this Inter side. I'm showing it to you right now. This is the aerial duel win rates for Inter this year. They led Europe's top five leagues with a 59% aerial duel win rate. And you can see Dumfries, Bissek, Acerbi, Bastoni, De Vrij, if he even plays, all of these guys, 63% or above in terms of aerial duel win rates. They are so good in the air. And PSG doesn't really send in a lot of crosses. In fact, I looked this up. Among Europe's top five leagues, they were 84th of 96 teams in terms of actually attempting crosses. So, uh, what is the solution, right? Like, you have these 1v1 situations. How do you actually beat this Inter side? Well, here's an image here from extra time against Barcelona. Barcelona decided, okay, we cannot play through the middle. Like it's just not working. So let's try to overload Yamal's side of the pitch and we'll try to get him or somebody else into 1v1s. And what ended up happening a lot was Eric Garcia was just given free roam to run into the half spaces. So for somebody like McKimmie or Mendez, that could be a huge key in this match. And those two guys could, obviously, because they get forward and they invert, they'll do both overlapping and underlapping runs to be able to create that type of space or get on the end of those chances. So look out for those. You might see something like that. Another aspect is back post crosses, back post overloads, excuse me. So Barcelona was doing this. Barcelona didn't have the aerial advantage against Inter because really there's very few teams that actually do. But what they did is, and Eric Garcia, you can see this is from the goal that Eric Garcia scored in the 53rd minute or 54th minute. They got a 3v2 on the back side here against, one of them was against DeMarco, who, like I showed you in that previous image, doesn't have a very high aerial duel win rate. Dumfries does, but DeMarco doesn't because he's short. But if you can get these type of 3v2 situations, you don't have to get on the end of a header. You can hammer it home like Eric Garcia did. And Barcelona kept doing this over and over and over again because they got desperate. They were down 2-0. They needed to get back into the game. And I think that's what you'll see as the match comes along. If PSG is losing, if they are tied late, you're going to see them start to overload these back post situations. So it's going to be very key whether that's Hakimi, whether that's one of the wingers coming in here to the 18-yard box to get on the end of something that is going to be a massive key for PSG as the match goes along. I think you'll see them try to play through the middle to open right up from the jump, but they're not going to have much success. So it's going to come down to when you start to get desperate, can you get in these type of situations? Can you get these type of overloads against Inter's center backs? Because the reality is, if you're sending in crosses, if you're a team like PSG and similar to a team like Barcelona, if you're not going to win aerial duel win rates against, a Serbi, Bastoni, Bissek, or whoever, it makes sense to just play crosses away from those guys and try to hit the back post, right? So I think that's what you'll kind of see PSG try and do. Again, it's really going to come down to how effective they are with their wingers, and they're not going to get out in transition very much. If they do, they got to take advantage of those situations. So it will be interesting to see what in Luis Enrique's plan is for actually breaking them down. Because again, I've mentioned this many times before. Position rotations are great. Like fluidity is amazing, but they really only are effective if you can use them to play through certain areas of the pitch and you can pull guys out of position. That doesn't really happen with Inter. So we'll see what happens. But for Inter in possession, again, very similar to Barcelona. Like they have the advantages over PSG in terms of physicality and in transitions. That's what they had over Barcelona, and they took advantage of them, and they ended up getting through here to the final. Right off the bat, Inter in the first leg against Barcelona, they tried to play out of the back a little bit. They were making a lot of mistakes, though, so they just kind of abandoned that, and they just said, all right, we'll just play the ball directly to our forwards, which ended up being really successful. And I think that's the approach that they should come with here against PSG because, like I said, they have the physicality advantage. They have the advantage of winning a lot of these duels and second balls. And I think early on that's going to be their best method of actually attacking PSG because Thuram and Martinez consistently against Barcelona were winning those duels and allowing Inter to get the ball moving forward. Now, things are going to be a little different here against PSG. That is uh, because Barcelona was just so extreme with their high line. PSG is really not that way. They're a little more hesitant, and also the wide areas are going to be a huge key here because PSG is way more aggressive with their fullbacks, Mendes and Hakimi, pushing them forward in the attack, which often means that Marquinhos and Pacho are on islands, or Neves and Vitinha have to drop in and help defend in these type of transitions. So the wide areas for Inter are going to be key, and they love to attack there with their fullbacks. I'm showing you the image from the first leg against, this is 20 seconds in against Barcelona when they scored. I mean, the two most advanced guys are DeMarco and Dumfries in a transition break. They'll just bomb them forward over and over and over again. And utilizing their forwards as hold-up play can really allow them to release Dumfries, to release DeMarco. And, I've showed this example before, but, you know, here in the 48th minute, 49th minute against Barcelona in the first leg, Taremi just drops in. Bastoni finds him. He holds it up for just a second, and he's able to release Dumfries right down. And you can see how many players are getting forward for Inter. This is what they do when they have the chance to break. Center backs, fullbacks, whoever is bombing forward so that they can get in these type of situations to get on the end of a cross or to create a big chance. So counterattacks are going to be huge for them. And quite frankly, Arsenal is not a good counterattacking side, but Inter is one of the best transition teams in the world. Barcelona knew that, but Flick came with the approach that he said we're going to live with the risk of Inter having a few of these type of counterattacks because he knew that in the end that he team was going to create the more dangerous chances because he committed so many players in the attack. In the end, he was right. I mean, Barcelona ended up out creating Inter 4.2 to I think it was, excuse me, 4.2 to 3. So in the end, he was right. They just came out on the wrong side of variance. PSG could come with the same approach, but it's cup final. It's like, it's not over two legs. And, for Inter as well, set pieces are going to be so massive for them. They scored 17 goals in Serie A off of set pieces, two of them against Barcelona in the semifinals. And I've mentioned this before when PSG faced Arsenal. They're a short team and they're not very good at winning aerial duels. And they're actually kind of below average at defending set pieces as well. And I want to show you Arsenal's original routine because I think it's key. Keep in mind that Inter is obviously a very tall team. They're very, very good, like I've said, at winning aerial duels. They're the best team in Europe at doing that. So Arsenal starts off with their usual back post routine. I don't know if you'll see Inter do this exact routine, but you'll see them here. And if you can see in the middle there, that's Vitinha and Neves, and I believe Hakimi right there. Those three guys are in the middle. So what does Arsenal do? Let's see the next image here. They target those three guys and they just hammer them. This was the one that got VAR'd off because Moreno was barely offside. So for Inter, taking advantage of set pieces, winning aerial duels, physicality, old school football is going to be the way. If they're going to win this cup final, that's the way they're going to do it. So it's going to be a very fun match. These type of matches where you have two managers who have completely different philosophies on the way football should be played always makes for an incredibly fascinating encounter. I mean, look what we just saw with Inter and Barcelona. That was probably one of the best semifinals you'll ever see in your life. So it comes down to, quite simply, I know I've already mentioned it many times. Can PSG's wingers win 1v1? Can they create chances off of that? Can they actually break down Inter's low block? Can Inter hit PSG in transition the same way that they were able to hit Barcelona? And can they be effective on set pieces similar to how they were against Barcelona? And either way, it should be a historic night in Munich for one of these two clubs. Again, Inter hasn't won the Champions League for 15 years. Italian club hasn't won the Champions League for 15 years. PSG, this is the competition they want to win since Qatar took it over, and they've had so much heartbreak and now they are finally on the doorstep of winning it. You can see from my exact score probabilities here. I have PSG at about a 53% chance of winning this in 90 minutes and a 63% chance of lifting the trophy. So PSG are the clear favorites. They've been they've been pretty much the best team in this outside, I'd say Barcelona have been the best team in this competition. But I mean, Inter's taken out both Bayern Munich and Barcelona, two teams that are very, very similar to PSG. So it's definitely going to be a very difficult challenge for PSG, and it should be a really fun night in Munich. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Unexpected Goals. As we go into the summer, I'll have a good plan of what's coming forth here on the YouTube channel, what's coming forth on the podcast, and what's coming forth on the Substack. So thank you all for a great club season, and I'll see you next time.